Hey guys, Tim here, Big Dog Forge. Welcome back to the shop. So a bunch of you have been asking me lately, when am I going to get back to the forging videos? I haven't been doing a lot of that lately. Well, it's true. We took a little trip around the country and had to put a lot of things on hold, but we are getting back to that. Right now we need to finish up the solid fuel smithy, and that means we have to build a set of bellows. So we're going to do that with recycled and found materials, stuff we bought at flea markets and yard sales, things like that. And we're going to keep this as inexpensive as possible. So if you guys out there, any of you need a set of these things, you'll see how inexpensively you can get this done. Takes a little scrounging and looking around, but it's not too hard. Stick with me. It should be fun. Alright guys, so this set of bellows I built about 26, 27 years ago, and I used to use it in a little traveling demonstration show that I did at Ren fairs, and it's been hanging on the wall for probably 20 years. And this was assembled from scrap. That piece of leather there was from an apron from Harbor Freight way back when. You got it upside down here, so I can show you. I'm going to open it up so you can see the canvas, and it's still Bellows's. Okay, so this bellows is just way too small. I was going to refurbish it, rebuild it, and get it back into shape and try to use it. It's got a little bit of a nostalgia to it for me, but it just doesn't have the volume. It doesn't look right. And so we're just going to build a brand new one. So I commandeered the CNC machine at work and grabbed some of this old crate wood. This is all recycled stuff, and we're going to cut a bunch of pieces out so that we can assemble ourselves some bellows. And we're going to do this absolutely as inexpensively as possible with as many recycled and found materials as we can. So this is going to be our basis for our bellows. I cut several different pieces, different shapes and sizes. It only took a few minutes. I was able to fit it into a lunchtime or two. And this is a piece of old fencing. It's cedar boards. We're going to use these to back this oriented strand board, or OSB, and it's going to give us our exterior look that we want and a little more weight on that wood. And we'll stiffen it all the way around as well. So the screws that we've got have either been purchased at yard sales, junk sales, or estate sales, and I typically pay $1 a box for them. Now I did buy the liquid nails, the adhesive here, and I bought a bottle of Titebond 3 glue, wood glue, because I couldn't find any at any junk sales that were really good. We're going to go ahead and get these guys put together first, because this is going to take me several days, and I can get this put on and let it dry overnight. And we'll get a bunch of screws put in this thing, hold it all together. So this is the top of the bellows, and those screws were a little bit long, but when you're buying used stuff or leftover stuff, you deal with what you get, and wasn't a big deal. We just took them off a little cut-off wheel on a little grinder. It was pretty quick work there. So we will use a Sawzall and cut the excess off. And this is where I should have gone in and got a clamp, but didn't. But it worked out okay. And I'm just showing you this one, and then I'll do the bottom half off camera. And it's getting a little bit late in the day here, so I will not film doing the bottom half. It's going to be pretty much the same thing, but I'll show it to you after it's done here in a minute. You just dress up the edges, make sure everything matches, get rid of the slivers, clean things up a little bit. So the wife and I spend just about every weekend on Saturdays for a few hours in the summertime going to every yard sale, estate sale, whatever we can find, and we pick things up with this sort of thing in mind. And what I'm using here is a deck sealer, water sealer, and these things will get several coats by the time this is done. The deck sealer, I paid $2 for a gallon of it at a yard sale. The can had been opened once, but it's in really good shape. And you can see that this is the bottom. Those are the inlet valves, or the inlet valve holes rather. And we're going to give this water seal on the bottom. And the reason we're doing this is because this thing is going to live outside in a pretty harsh environment in the solid fuel Smithy, and there will be a lot of moisture around it all the time. So the top half, you can barely see this, it's gotten pretty dark by now. The top half is what I'm rubbing some polyurethane into. It'll give it a little bit better look. Alright, we're going to put this away for tonight and get a fresh start tomorrow. Well, it's tomorrow. Alright, these are the center boards. There's 3 of them. We're going to stack them and screw them together. And we'll clamp the first 2 together. And we'll use a bunch of this tight bond wood glue again. This stuff's supposed to be waterproof. It's tight bond 3. So we'll clamp this all together, and I'm going to set this up so that I can run a skill saw across it just in front of where the valve holes are for the center board. And what that's going to accommodate, we're going to cut a groove in this so that we can put our support rod through it without having to try to drill a hole from one side to the other. So we'll make that cut, and we're only cutting through the first piece of board. We lay down a 1/2 inch rod there and make a second cut, and then we'll get a little saw, and we can, because we didn't cut all the way to the bottom, I wanted to be very careful with that, not weaken that bottom board. And we'll grab our round rod that we're going to use, and we'll clean this out real good, and then we will glue and screw the final board to the top of this, and that will be our support rod to hold it up on our brackets. Now we're not going to leave the rod in there because we have a bunch of work to do to get canvas on this thing, and we'll put that rod back in after the canvas is on. We got a few screws in there to hold it up, and I lost a little footage here, so we went ahead and glued this thing up, and I put a, I don't know, a couple of dozen screws in it to hold it together so it'd glue up good and tight. And by this time the screws that I have were not too long for this particular piece, so I didn't have to cut these guys off. Get her clamped together to get all 3 pieces lined up, and there you go. So it's got a bunch of screws in it, and what I'm putting together here, these small pieces of wood, these small slabs, will be stacked up on either side about 3 high, And this is going to be our nozzle end. So we've notched this first piece. This is for airflow. So you're looking at the top of the center board, and the air will flow out into that notch, and we'll drill a hole downward and towards the front, intersecting, so that the airflow can come out the front. It'll all become pretty clear to you here in a minute, because I'm not sure this is making a lot of sense to you, but you'll see it come together. Alright, so we put the one airflow board on top, and we're going to stack two up on the bottom here, and then we'll start drilling our airflow holes to the nozzle. So we'll get this thing flipped over, and unfortunately it didn't turn the camera on when I started drilling the large hole. It's about a 5-inch hole down through the layers for airflow out to the nozzle. And we'll get this thing flipped over, and you can see that here in a second. And after we get these holes drilled, we will have more layers to put on top and bottom, so this thing will get thicker. We're going to wait on that, make sure everything goes good. So you can see I've got through 3 layers. I've got to get through one more to get down to the center of this block. Alright, now this is going to be our outlet nozzle, and we're going to center it up. We currently have 2 layers top and 2 layers bottom of the center board. And this is a 2.5-inch OD pipe. There we go. So what we'll do is simply notch down either side of that, enough room to slip the pipe in. It'll be a square hole, but we will have a plate welded to the back of that pipe, and it will bolt onto the face with a leather gasket behind it. There we go. And I needed to bring that hole back a little bit further into the bellows for airflow. So we're going to move that large hole saw back half a hole and cut down into it a couple of layers. This will give us an increased airflow from the bellows into the nozzle. There we go. Get the sawdust out of this thing. And what I didn't show is that before I glued this top plate on, I coated the inside of that hole with the Type Bond 3 glue, a little waterproofing, and just to seal it up, make sure we don't have any air leaks anywhere. Get rid of the slivers. And those areas I'm sanding there, eventually we'll get the valves on them for inlet. Okay, we've got more of our sealer, and we're going to coat all of this stuff several times, like I said before, because I don't want this wood absorbing moisture through the winter time and expanding, contracting. It'll just be helpful. And I did this, as I said before, several times while it was still disassembled to get all the parts. So this is the top board, and we need to get a rib in between there. Now these ribs are just to keep the canvas straight between the center board and the top board, and there'll be one on the bottom as well. So this is where we need one more board on the top for a cap. So we'll use this piece of scrap, and that'll work really well. Alright, We'll need one for the top and one for the bottom. And this is what we will mortise our hinges into on either side. And we're going to use a hinge that I got from a job site. They were changing out doors and throwing all their hardware and everything away, so I got a couple of hinges for freebies. And that's what we're going to mortise into this. And we're going to mortise it down into the top plate and to this plate I just put on. I got a little roto zip tool with a end mill on it, and I'm just using it like a big die grinder, and we'll just mortise these out by hand. This is all going to be covered by leather in this joint and sealed up, so you won't even see this hinge. I'll pilot drill the screw holes, and we're going to cover it in glue. It'll reinforce the wood, that tight bond will. It'll hold the screws in, and it'll level out the wood underneath that hinge. There we go. And we'll do the same thing with that top plate. We'll just mortise ourselves out of pocket so it sits nice and flush. And we did not put glue under this because we're going to take it apart here in a minute. We're just checking for fit at the moment. There we go. Alright, we're going to take this apart. We'll flip it over and put the last board on the opposite side. We're going to call it good for this time around. Next time we'll be putting valves on it and some assembly, and we'll see if we can get the canvas put on it. We're getting very close to having an operating bellows. So there you go, guys. Alright guys, there you go. So next time we'll be putting valves in it and the canvas on it, and we won't be too far from firing up that forge and actually doing some forging. So that video should be out in the next day or two, and we'll see you then. Meanwhile, thanks for stopping by Big Dog Forge. Like, share, subscribe if you like what you're seeing. Thanks guys, I really appreciate it. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Be safe. Bye bye now.